Hello, and welcome to Zane Talks Torg. I'm J-M the GM, and this is my son, Zane. Hi, Zane.
Hi.
You ready to talk some Torg today?
Oh, yeah, I am.
All right, what's our topic for today? What did you want to talk about?
Well, we're not going to cover every single one, but it's going to be Gospogs.
What are Gospogs?
Well, technically, Gospog. That word is both the single and the plural.
Uh-huh.
But they
like
are...
Lego.
Uh-huh. The plural of Lego is Lego bricks.
Yes.
Gospogs are human corpses intertwined with rotting vegetarian and pured flesh.
Vegetation and putrid flesh. Yeah. So they're basically they're these plant zombies that were gifted to all of the Cosms High Lords by the Gauntman, right?
Uh-huh. The Oroch High Lord.
Exactly. So they kind of fill in your general threat, if you will. So while each Cosm has their own unique version of them, the Gospogs are sort of like the zombies of Torg. And so the first planting, there's multiple plantings between 1 and 5. Currently, yes, there could be more.
This is year 1.
This is for year 1. That's true.
Not all of them. We're skipping Oroch and PM Pacifica because those 2 books are not out yet.
That's fair. So again, 5 plantings. The first planting are basically identical across the board. They're themed a little bit differently, but mechanically they're the same. What you should know about Gospogs is that they do cause fear, which means when your Storm Knights encounter them, they have to make a willpower or spirit test or become very stymied. They are mindless, in which case they're immune to taunt and intimidation. They are relentless, which means they ignore all shock damage, and as undead, they're immune to poisons and other effects that require breathing, eating.
Like living processes.
Yes. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how they get themed, and we're going to put the pictures kind of right up here. Okay, so when we jump over to the Nile Empire, what can we expect from those Gospogs?
We can expect a mummy-like pharaoh with a long gun. I think it's called a KK-81 rifle. Mm-hmm. We can expect a grayish with a circular thing on it, like that.
Oh, yeah, almost like a mummy.
Like another mummy with a different hat, with a different little hood, and that one has claws apparently.
Yeah, and we're going to show pictures of all of these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There is the Gospog of the 4th planting.
Which 4th planting requires a reality-rated foe to put the Gospog seed in, so.
Oh. So those guys I think they are actual mummy-like because they have the mummy...
The bandages,
right? The bandages, yeah. I forgot that word.
And then what's the last one?
Wait, there's one more thing.
Okay.
If I remember correctly from the book, their bodies... their bodies are insects. Like, the inside of the bandages are insects.
Yeah. So let me pause you here real quick. Okay. So the Gospogs of the second plantings, they do use the KK-81 rifle. And that's really sort of what they do, aside from the fact that they're a little scarier because they're synchronized, which means any bonus from a combined damage gets applied to damage as well as to the attack itself when they kind of swarm. The Gospog of the third planting have much more stone-like skin, so they're much tougher, and they are insanely fast. They can jump, they can sprint, and they can run on walls. Now, the ones of the 4th planting that Zane just discussed are filled with ravenous insects. You were right.
So under the bandages.
Yeah. So they will come out and attack people they are engaged with, and any enemy within 3 meters of them suffers 2 shock automatically at the start of the turn from this swarming aura. But then tell us about the beta clearance.
5th planting. Now, this guy... if I remember correctly from the book, it actually, the person who the seed was planted in, they actually have some of their memories.
Yep, and they have to be a Stormer or a Storm Knight to make a Gospog of the 5th planting.
Basically, it's a Scorpion Man. So, in its chest, though, there's, bodies.
Yeah,
so skeletons.
So it's large, it has a stinger, it has dread, which means you use a dramatic line on the drama card as opposed to the standard line. And it does have this onslaught ability where it gets to make 2 claw attacks and its stinger attack without taking multi-target penalties. So it's a real big threat.
That's why it's beta clearance.
Right. Now, moving on to the Living Lands, what can you tell us about the Living Lands?
Well, for starters, it is said that the second planting is much more plant-like, with plants spurting up through throughout this Gospog. Basically, they have vines. They have these plants. There's a mouth on the arm, I think. Like a carnivorous plant now. There's a vine that ends with another carnivorous plant mouth.
Carnivorous plant mouth?
Carnivorous. Yeah. It's just more plant-like.
Right, and so the second planting ones are going to have things like Blood Scent, where they can track a wounded target with a favorable roll. They can... stalks with heads like carnivorous plants can spit thorns as a ranged attack. But in general, that's a little bit of a theming for the second planting. What can you tell us about the third planting?
The third planting is basically a zombie plant octopus. With 2 eyes on each side of its head. Apparently it's fireproof even though it's vines, because it can go in it.
Yeah, it's immune to fire, and it has multiple tentacles that lash out without multi-attack penalties. They're really tough. All right, what about the fourth planting?
They are basically giant, evil treants, basically.
They look a lot like treants, yeah.
Yeah, they're basically giant, evil, glowing, red-eyed treants.
Okay.
Let me see if there's anything... There's nothing... I don't think there's anything special from the picture.
Yeah, and then the Gospog of the Living Land 5th planting are apparently roughly the size of a small hill. What else can they do that's awesome?
Well, not awesome awesome except when you're fighting them. They have bite claws. They are very large, which is a +4. By the way, the fourth planting was a normal large.
Yep, they're covered with acidic moss that digests people.
Yep, flesh-eating moss.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, it's not... Look, surprisingly, it's not going to make it... What is it called? What's the dramatic?
It does have a dramatic. It does have the dread ability. It's just not listed on the little card. Also, they're flammable, but you should be very careful about these guys because they have 5 possibilities standard. So if you fight a Gospog of the 5th planting, they've got 5 possibilities. Now, the next one we're going to look at are the ones from Isle. And the ones from Isle, what do you want to tell us about the Isle ones, Zeno?
So, all of them have this poison ooze coming, except for the third planting, of something called grave rot.
Okay.
Basically, it's poison. It's liquid it's sludgy poison.
Okay.
The second planting Gospog I don't really think there's anything special about it. It does have some plants. There's nothing special about the second planting.
Well, the second planting, they have the poison, so any damage that exceeds the toughness of the poison victim.
And they have blood sensitive as well.
Yep, and they take a shock every round.
Well, the third planting doesn't look much different when it emerges from the ground, which we'll talk about the plantings later.
Okay.
The actual plant. But basically, they don't look much different. The main difference is in behavior, though. They are automatically drawn to weapons and armor. And as soon as they pick them up, the weapons are fused to their bodies.
Yep. All right, now what about fourth planting?
And also this one does not no grave rot.
Okay. Fourth planting?
Fourth planting, it is dragon-like the fifth planting, except in place of the bonish wings, they are massive tentacles. Basically.
Let me see it real quick.
It is large.
It is large, and as Zane said, that it can grapple or lash up to 2 foes with its tentacles at no multi-target penalty.
But 3 or more is multi-target penalty.
Yep. So what do we got for the last guy?
The Gospog, the beta clearance Gospog of the fifth planting. It is basically a plant bone dragon. Basically, the wings are corpses fused together. It cannot fly, and it couldn't fly even if flesh covered the wings, by the way.
Right, and in addition to the poison, it does have a deadly fog that sort of extends around it.
It also breathes that fog.
Now, the last two we're going to talk about is the Cyber Papacy and Darkhold. Right, which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's do the Cyber Papacy.
All right, so as you know, the Cyber Papacy is a much more technological area, but it does have Gospog. So the Gauntman has gifted all of the other High Lords these soldiers and minions, and some of them use them to different effect. When we get to the Pan Pacifica episode where we cover Orochi and Pan Pacifica, you'll find out what they did with their Gospogs, because not all of the High Lords trust the Gauntman. But let's talk about the Cyber Papacy ones.
So, if you are familiar with the Bible, each of these represent a different horseman of the apocalypse.
Okay. As Zane said that they are related to the horseman of the apocalypse, the second planting is actually pestilence.
Oh. So, it does have wrappings around it, but not all the way around.
All right.
They have this thing called infection. When this creature is defeated, adjacent creatures must test defeat, or it's become critically ill. Reality-rated characters suffer an injury for one scene on a failure.
Yeah. Now, the Gospog of the third planting are the Horsemen of War.
They have red armor nearly everywhere. They have long swords, apparently lightning bolts.
Yeah, so they can cast lightning bolts, they have this blood armor and two-handed blades, but then the other thing is whenever the attack action is the approved action, Gospog of the third planting actually get to make an all-out attack without becoming very vulnerable. So they get all of the bonuses, they get the +4 to hit, don't have to worry about taking on the -4 to their own defenses. Now the fourth planting are related to famine. What do they look like?
Well, should I describe how they look like first, or because these guys are actually they're not witnessed. Things happen around when you know, and when those things happen around the place, you know that there's a third planting in the area.
So they've got Cloak of Darkness and Creatures of Shadows, which Cloak of Darkness is this ability that you take the darkness penalties and add it to their toughness. So the darker it is in the area when you fight a fourth planting, the harder it is to wound them. And then any fine tests to see these Gospogs are unfavorable because they are creatures of shadows.
In darkness, specifically.
And then...
Wait, can I describe things that happen so that you know around?
Sure.
So, may I please? So, manifesting, the Gospog of the fourth planting are more whispered about than witnessed, at least by the masses. The first sign that they are in the area is a sudden rotting of crops and disappearance of animals, including dogs, birds, and livestock. Within days, people start to disappear. At the end of the seventh day, locals who are not faithful enough are discovered dead in their beds, wasted away as if they've starved over a period of many months, even though it's like they are killed even though they are kind of killed instantly.
Right. All right, and then the last one, the Gospog of the fifth planting, these are the ones that are related to the Horsemen of Death.
No one can escape death. Basically, these guys are like centaurs. They have a cloak over the man part. The horse part has wings.
It's almost skeletal, yeah. They look a little bit like a Pegasus merged with a cloaked reaper. They've got the big scythe.
They got the big scythe.
Yep. They also have dread, which means it's a dramatic scene when you find them. And then they have some powers where, like, they're ethereal. It's harder to resist their fear.
And gloater.
Yeah, gloater is when any time taunt or intimidation is an approved action, they can affect the entire party without having to take a multi-action penalty, which is really scary. I can't wait to use these against the Horsemen in my Torg game. All right, and then last but not least, we're going to cover the Tharcold ones. Now, the Tharcold ones are really just weird. So, like, the second planting ones are only about 3 feet tall, although they mass the same as a normal-sized person. They tend to wear hoods and robes and other loose clothing, and they can pass for very creepy children if need be. What do you want to say about the Gospog of the second?
Well, apart from what you said, it's small instead of normal or large, very large.
Which means it's harder to hit, and they're fast. They move.
So they can climb 14 meters around, and they can run 56 meters around.
Now, the third planting, they look like the first planting, so just kind of like a desiccated corpse, but they have rusty metal jabbing out from them. Some of their limbs are cybernetic. Their arms could be replaced by a gun, teeth out of bullets. They're really just sort of, they embody this kind of body horror of Tharcold as well as this techno fusion of flesh.
It's called a coat. It is called a coat tech, what this guy is fused with.
All right, so what do we need to know about him, Zane?
Well, apart from your description, he has a shock lash, and he has an elf sprayer.
Yeah.
Damage 14 long burst.
Yeah, so he's got basically like a submachine gun built into him.
And he's also radioactive. Roll a BD for each Gospog, and on a 6/affinity symbol, deal 1 radiation wound.
Yeah, so if you're too close to them, they are radioactive. Now, opposite of the second planting is the fourth planting. They're almost 3 meters tall, and they look like they're wearing radiation suits that have sort of fused with their body.
Yeah, and the mask is actually their mouth.
So what do you want to tell me about these guys? They do have Cloak of Darkness, so they're harder to hit.
Yeah, like the second fantasy. Jitter. If an attack would do more than 1 wound, it deals 1, and the Gospog appears adjacent and gains a free attack.
Yep, which is really kind of cool.
And unless if you're fighting it. And then there's its creepiest ability and its worst ability. Unless if you're not fighting it. It's really cool if you're not fighting it.
Are you looking at Puppeteer? Those who would target the Gospog with attacks or interaction attacks risk meeting its gaze unless they don't take a -6. So this is sort of like a Medusa thing where you don't want to look directly at them.
Except it doesn't turn you into stone, it turns you into its mindless puppet.
Yeah, so if you roll an odd on the D20 to make your attack, the attack is redirected against an ally or against the original attacker itself. Now, the last of the plantings, these are very rare. Fifth plantings are always the rarest.
But they're the most powerful.
They are the most powerful. Tell us about the fifth planting, Gospogs.
Well, it's kind of a spider with 4 legs only.
Okay.
It is covered in eyes. At the little joints that they turn down for the legs, I think there's like these long flag-like things. Maybe they're tongues, like these little ropey things.
Oh yeah, little tentacles.
Its entire belly is a mouth dripping with poison.
Yep.
Test defeat and suffer a wound on a fail. A good plus ends the effect. Playing without wounds causes death and explosion. And there's also this invisibility thing.
Yep.
-6 to find or attack it when it is still, but it's only a -2 when the Gospog is moving or fighting.
And it's scarier than a normal Gospog, and it uses the dramatic scene. All right, Zane. So tell me why you like Gospogs as a monster.
Well, it's just that they're an interesting villain, foe to face, and there's so many kinds that you can face. There's like a vast majority of them.
So let's see. We covered Core Earth, Living Land, Cyber Papacy, Tharkold, Isle, and the Nile Empire. So there's the first planting, which are always basically identical, and then there's 21 Gospog right now, not counting Oroch or Pan Pacifica.
But who knows? Maybe in year 2 we'll have 6 plantings, 7 plantings.
That's what you're really hoping?
And they will be higher levels.
Yeah.
Delta clearance, maybe.
Yeah, or Omega clearance. All right. Check out the Ulysses International channel, where I run Tuesday night Torgs, or Torgs Day night, as we have come to call it, with the Horseman game, as well as the B Team and several other one-shots that we have been doing. If you liked this video, please subscribe to the Iconic Production YouTube channel. Give us a like on the video. Click on the little notification button. Mash all of the buttons. And
even the ones that are bad.
Don't mash the bad buttons. This has been another Zane Talks Torg. Zane, thank you so much for joining me on these. I love doing these with you. And we're going to start doing a series where I teach Zane how to run Torg, with the hopes that at the end of it, Zane will run a small session for me down at the studio. So, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. Have a good one.
Bye. Can't wait to do more.